Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last installment in the trilogy, which is going to be making graphs. And so I'm going to cover just like a couple different formats of graphs. We mostly use scatter plots for almost everything in the SSPI, but sometimes you're going to want a histogram, so I guess I'll cover that too. So yeah, we are in the previous tutorials spreadsheet, where I've done the basics and the intermediate replications. And so now I'm going to make some graphs. So we're going to do sort of a fake sensitivity test to sort of assess various things. And if you're working on goal posting right now, this is sort of the bread and butter of what you're doing. So let's start off by plotting the indicator score. And what we want to see is we want to see a distribution of scores across countries. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a scatter chart, and we're going to organize the values in our sheet so that we can make the scatter chart look nice and linear so that we can get some information about the distribution of scores out of it. And if all of that was a little bit opaque, let's just organize it, and then we'll sort of see what we're talking about. So data, we are going to use our best friend from the last video, sort range. So we right click, view more cell actions, sort range, and we have a header row. And so we're going to sort by indicator score in, let's say, increasing order for now. So our rankings are now in reversed order. We could have sorted it by that too. It's not particularly important, but we have these income share ratios, and we are going to plot them. Now, to start out, I'd like to kind of give this video a bit of a point. We're first going to look at the raw indicator scores, which is something you should always do when you're setting goalposts. And then we're going to set some different values of goalposts. So I'll call this one GP 0.2, 1.25, which is denoting for me goalposts. 0.2 is the lower and 1.25 is the upper. And then we're going to sort of change that up using our goalposting formula from last time. And so let us set up our chart. So we're going to highlight this range for now. Actually, let's do our goalposts first. So just we have something to shoot for. So your first guess at a goalpost, we're probably, if you were doing this from scratch, you'd probably be like, okay, let's start 0 to 1 and just look at what we're dealing with, right? Because I don't see any ones in the data. And so let's do it. Okay, 0 to 1. And how do we do that? Well, we go min of our score with 1, max with 0, and that's taking care of the capping. And then we say, okay, our goalpost is this. Let's see, I need a parenthesis here, left, and then we're going to have, what is it, D52, which is going to be our D53, which is going to be our lower goalpost. And then we're going to have divide by here, and what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure we're sticking the cells to the right values. If you need a refresher on that, watch the last video. D53, compute the scores. Nice. So 0 to 1, I'm dividing by 0. Why am I dividing by 0? Because I don't have any goalposts specified. 1.00, just got 1, that's 0. Nice. And so now we should get a value there, and lo and behold, it's just that. So nothing very special. Probably didn't need to finick around with all of that kind of messiness on top, but let's see. But the reason we would use a formula like this, and the way we could extend this to be smart about it, is instead of sticking just to the cells, we know upper and lower goalposts can slide across here. And so our upper goalpost, let's see, our upper goalpost is always going to be in slot 52, but it might not be in column D. It just depends on where we're at. And in the same way, our indicator score is actually going to slide over. So let's fix our sticking, is what I'm saying, so that we can use the same goalposting formula wherever we are in the sheet, and we can easily add new goalposts. So let's see, 2. So I'll have 4 different sets of goalposts. We haven't decided on these. Let's say this one is 0.10 to 1.5, and let's say this one is GP of 0.20 to 1.0, which, The reasons for these, just kind of making them up as I go to get some different goalposts, get some different looks at the data. This is the one we're currently using. We might revise it based on the lower scores we see here. In particular, we might bring this goalpost down so we're not capping so many countries out at 0. But let's fix our formula real quick. So what do we want to do? We want to look in column C. We're always looking in column C, but we might not be looking in row 2. We're going to be looking down the sheet. So we're going to stick C, but we're going to leave 2 free to float. And then we're always looking in spot 53, but it might not be column D. And so we're going to unstick D, always in 52. So this is row 52, row 53. We're always looking there for our lower and upper goalposts, but those are free to float. And so now we have a formula that we can actually drag the goalpost. So these are going to get divided by 0 errors. But if we stick in, what do we have? 0.1 and 1.5, and then 0.2, and is this 1.0? 1.0. Now we can actually drag everything over, and then we can drag everything down. So we can very easily set up a whole bunch of different goalposts without having to do any manual math if we use our sticky cells correctly. By the way, I don't know if sticky cells are the correct term of art. That's just how I think of them. Putting the dollar signs in there makes them a little sticky. So anyway, moving along. So I have a whole bunch of goalposts I want to compare, and we want to look at the distribution of scores. So the original distribution, we go to Insert, Chart, and we get a really ugly chart that doesn't make any sense. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the chart type to scatter. And scatter is usually what we're looking at. And we are going to do indicator score. Okay, so we're going to remove all series to start. Then we're going to build our own. So we want to take, plotting scores by country. So our x-axis is going to be the country. We're not going to have any labels. And it should show country, but it's not. And then we're going to add a series. And a series is just something to plot. So this is your y value, this series. The x value is, it's called the x value, so it's not so hard. But we want to look at the indicator score to start. And so we see that the indicator is a roughly linear indicator. There's this kind of breakpoint here, but there's probably nothing to worry about. And it's roughly between 0 and 1. And so this, we want to add a title. So we've now set up our chart. We have the things we want to look at, and we just want to customize it so that we can see. One thing we usually do is drag so you can actually see all the countries. So a little bit of resizing going on there. I'm moving it over and off of the data so that we can see the data underneath if we have to. And then we're going to do chart style. There's nothing to change there, it looks like. Chart title. So we always want a title so that we know what we're looking at. It's like unnormalized indicator score. Maybe that's a good subtitle. So we'll call that the subtitle. And with titling, you just want to make it as clear as possible what this graph is referring to. So we're going to make the title income share ratio replication. And then it's unnormalized indicator score, or maybe instead of unnormalized, we would call it raw data. Raw data indicator score. And then we want to put a vertical axis title that tells us what we're looking at. Ratio of bottom income share ratio, bottom 50 divided by top 10. And so now it's really clear, what is this measuring? Perfect. So now we've got this sort of chart that looks pretty and looks nice. And we can use this chart to start, or we can just keep adding new charts. So if we copy and paste this chart, now we can compare all of the different, actually, I'll just insert a new chart. Let's just go from scratch so we can see that process one more time. So we insert chart with our data range highlighted. It won't really work super well if you don't highlight the data range, although sometimes it will. So you kind of gamble with Google Sheets figuring out what you're asking for if you want to not highlight your range. But if you highlight the range, you get a lot of control. So I insert chart, and then it looks ugly again, but I'm going to quickly just go over to scatter. And then since this actually, I want to compare a lot of things, I'm not going to remove all series. I'll just remove the ones I don't want, which are this, 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 and this. And you'll see, immediately it's looking quite presentable. So Google Sheets picks the colors for you, which is nice. And then this is a comparison of indicator scores. And so I'm going to say comparison of income share ratio indicator scores. And then maybe the subtitle is 4 different sets of goal posts. And yeah, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, we've got a chart with lots of comparisons. You could go in and manually change the colors using these options, but you generally won't have to use them too much. We might want to add a vertical axis title. So let's do that real quick, a vertical axis title. Jump in, call it normalize ratio score, or something like that. You know, being as descriptive as you can without being too verbose. Maybe that's a bit long, but you could also just call it normalized score, you know. But yeah, you can see different indicators, their effects, and this is the kind of thing that you can then talk about in a meeting or present very easily. And it summarizes all of the information in this table in a way that is very readable to someone who hasn't, you know, looked at all of these numbers super closely, but you can get a good sense of what's going on. Like this blue series, that's the unnormalized thing. Everyone scores pretty high, whereas in something like the red series, there are a bunch of values that are capped out and no one scores very high. Like the highest country is scoring 0.652. And this is actually how we're currently doing it, but we were using older data to make that happen. And so maybe we'd want to revisit that because these scores are maybe a bit too low, but maybe not. All right, so I think that's all I wanted to cover for scatter plots. Let's just quickly cover how to set up a histogram. Same sort of process, but maybe you have to make some different considerations. So I'm going to insert, let's say I want to see what the distribution of the indicator scores are across countries. Let's just insert chart, and then I'm going to drop all my series. And I'm going to actually insert a different type of chart. Let's do histogram. And our x-axis is going to be indicator score, let's say. And we can sort of look at a distribution. And we can customize this by looking at the horizontal axis. And we can set a minimum value of 0 and a maximum of 1. And then we want to set up, see where it is, series. What we want to be able to do is set up how many buckets we have. And by buckets, I mean how many bars we divide up into, and maybe that's out here. Doesn't look like it is. Histogram, show dividers, bucket size. And then, yeah, we can have, okay, that's too big, 0.1. Let's say, or if we wanted to go finer, we could look at something like 0.05. Maybe that's too fine to be helpful, and it's sort of a little bit of an art to pick this. I think 0.1 is pretty good. It gives you a sense of where the countries are. There's a good couple who are kind of in here, not so many out here. It's got this little hump here, and then again, we would just run through and do the titles. And so chart title, distribution of indicator of income share ratio, raw data, raw income share ratio across countries. And then maybe this is subtitle, raw data, and then it's bottom 50 divided by top 10. raw share data, you know, you're just trying to be as descriptive. Share data, and then your horizontal axis title is income share ratio, something like that. And this is now a presentable chart to bring to a meeting. And so that's sort of how you make all the different charts in Excel. It's really not super complicated, which is nice. And that's why we use it over something like R, which is much more complicated to make plots, but you have a lot more control. And so there's definitely a trade-off in high-powered tools offer you incredible control, incredible replicability, and modularity, and all these things that care about, but they're harder to use, and there's a much steeper learning curve. Whereas, you know, in 20 minutes, we can learn how to basically make really pretty charts for everything you'd want in Google Sheets, which is nice. Okay, so I think that's it for these videos. I guess one thing I should have done in the last video is just quickly added the means across the columns, because when you're presenting your work, it's really important to, it's not called mean, it's called average. When you're presenting your work, it's really important to be able to see what these things are. These tell you some of the most important information about the data you've collected. And especially if you're presenting to the professor, she'll almost always ask you to see what these mean, median, min, and max is, or what these are for your data. Okay, so I've done that. I'm just gonna stick in stdiv C2, C50. Excellent, drag them across, and you are good to go. All right, I will see you in the meeting. Thanks for watching the tutorial series on Google Sheets. If there's anything I went too fast on or that needs more explanation, please let me know. I'm happy to upload another tutorial or another set of tutorials. There's another topic that comes up. I know we still haven't covered regressions, so I'll definitely have a tutorial up for how to do regressions in R probably, although you can do them in Excel. So anyway, that is it for me. Thank you very much.